I've said it before and I'll say it again. Tyranny comes in many forms. And some of you have picked up on this. In fact, quite a few of you have picked up on this. This new form of medical tyranny in the name of safety. I watched, like I think most of the world did, the presentation of the three-phase system for reopening the economy. The federal government didn't close the economy. That's what a lot of people miss. The assumption there is that they closed it and now it is their job to reopen it. Some have even suggested that the guidelines were just only merely guidelines and had no teeth to them. Some have also suggested that it's perfectly fine for the federal government to grant emergency status to a state and then later on add new requirements for that funding if the state doesn't do what the federal government says it should. That's okay. It's really amazing to see. And at the end of the video, actually right after the middle part of the video, I'm going to show you why I think this has been so easily accepted by the populace of America. And it's going to be something that I think is going to surprise a lot of you. But first, let's get this out of the way right now. Give him enough rope and he will hang himself. You see, this is the game now. There's this idea that since the government can't, and I use the word government very loosely there, the leader of the government, can't get around the 10th Amendment, what's going on now is that there's going to be enough leeway given to allow for there to be a different standard applied at a later date. What do I mean by that? Let's go back to Florida for just 1 second, and so let me see if I can explain how this is going to work. Let's say Governor DeSantis decides that he wants to go balls to the wall, foot to the floor, open up the economy before the end of May, blow through all the phases, say, you know what, that's a great guideline, but we're going to do it our way. And he reopens Disney, and basically, I guess you can't really order a business to be open, but I'm sure most businesses would like to be. And then, because of the massive flow of people going out and doing things that they haven't been able to do for a while, you are, of course, going to see an increase in flu-like symptoms. That happens any normal time. You see, before this, nobody tested people visiting Disney 7, 10, 14 days after they left. See, this is going to be why this is oranges compared to previous apples. People come to Disney from France, from Canada, from Mexico, from Japan, from California, from all over the place. They come, they mix, they have a good time. 60 million unique visitors a year. And then, they stay and then they leave. Now, prior to this, nobody went to those places and tested for, did they get sick? Well, now they're going to. And if that's the case, they're going to say, oh no, Florida went too fast, and look at all these people who are getting sick. There were people probably getting sick before. We just weren't looking at it. This is the game they're going to play. So then, of course, that information that wasn't compiled in years past is going to be used to go, okay, Florida, you need to go back to phase 2 or back to phase 1. This is the game they're going to play. You should have listened to the federal government. You should have done what the federal government said, and you did your own thing, and look at what this is what they're going to do. This is the game. And some of these things in the phases are just beyond tyranny. Schools remaining closed. There should always be, by the way, senior living facilities, a higher level of hygiene, of course. Large venues, sit-down dining, sporting venues, strict physical distancing protocols. Really, you see, that's the thing. All of a sudden, a place like St. Augustine reopens. And you have this huge crush of people wanting to go in there and visit like they do every year. Yes, of course. Compared to the last 2 weeks, compared to the last 4 weeks, you are, of course, going to see an increase in flu-like symptoms amongst people just because so many more are mixing. This is a recipe setting people up to fail. I'm trying to find the one. Let me see here if I can find it. Now they're going to allow, ready for this? Employers to take your temperature against your will. Guidelines for all phases. Develop and implement appropriate policies in accordance with federal, state, local regulations and guidance and informed by industry best practices regarding social distancing and protective equipment. Okay, fine. Temperature checks. Really? You're going to allow employers to just walk around with one of those little scanner deals and scan people's foreheads randomly to see if anybody might have a temperature. You see, sanitation, disinfection of common and high traffic areas, all this kind of thing, that was in place before, and people still got sick. Now, what's the big reason I think that people are adoring this? People are just bowing down and worshiping at the altar of the government right now. We'll get back to this in a minute. Yeah, believe it or not, it's this. I'm going to say something that's real unpopular right now. This guy sitting on the couch, at least the character that he played, needed to have his ass beat when he was a kid. Because this guy embodied narcissism and self-delusion, and they made it funny. They made it socially acceptable to be absolutely aberrant and antisocial. The one fairly normal character, they turned into a dunce and an object of how not to act, of what the wrong way of doing things is. And of course, everyone was distracted by the tank tops. Just like on Fox News, by the way. But in the meantime, this was the underlying message. Everybody made this cool. This idea of not going outside, not being around people. Anybody who's sick is a threat. And who remembers this episode, by the way, where he figures out that she gave him a cold? Of course they would have picked that character to be the one that did it wrong. See, people missed this. They were actually demonizing this character, the Penny character, through the whole thing. People were distracted, of course, by the way the young lady looks. She's very pretty. She's kept herself in shape, and she made a big fat paycheck playing this character. But there's one character that's borderline metrosexual, the Indian character, and they made this okay, which was horrible. The other character, Leonard, had these mommy issues. And then, of course, they had the Jewish character that they, I could go on and on and on and on and on about all of the subtle dysfunction and why this show was so popular. And now, when the government decides to step in and say, you know what? It is now our job to tell you what you should do to keep yourself healthy. And it's just a suggestion. It's just, the way we see things. But of course, we're the ones holding the purse strings. And we can, of course, retroactively change the standard for getting your money for a disaster declaration, not having informed you of that prior. And this was perfect. I'm glad somebody put this up. Phase 3. Phase 3 is the most important here. Take credit if the reopening is successful. Because nobody's going to say, golly, if we are successful here in Florida, Governor DeSantis did a great job. What a great guy. Way to go, Governor DeSantis. They're not going to say that. They're going to give this guy credit. But if it goes south, if there's a problem, if there's another outbreak, which there's going to be increased numbers, I promise you this, it's not a reason to take your foot off the accelerator. There's going to be increased numbers just because of the amount of people, generally speaking, that are going to be mingling again. The governor is going to take the blame. They're going to blame DeSantis because they've tried this before. It's a form, and I'm sure some of you are aware of this. Oh, sorry. Video from yesterday. Hold on. There we go. How many of you have ever been in any kind of a work social environment where there was one person that you wanted to get rid of, and you engaged in this behavior called Operation Dumbo Drop? Meaning that nobody did anything directly to get the guy fired or the girl fired, but they just nudged things in a certain direction this way and a certain direction that way to make that person's life nearly impossible, and to either get them to quit or to make their life such a living hell that they were failing over and over again, giving the supervisors no other recourse other than to either transfer the person, demote them, or fire them. This is what The Apprentice was all about. And I know there's people out there just want to adore and they want to worship and they want to think, golly, we have this great leader and he's doing all these wonderful things. And when they can't find actual wonderful things to prove their false statements, they make believe things like underground bases and underground tunnels and hundreds of thousands of children and all this other nonsense. 5,000 assassination attempts in the last 3 years or something ridiculous. They have to make believe things. And there are going to be people in Florida, if Governor DeSantis does the right thing and starts to make up lost ground economically, that are going to see that as a problem. The little Sheldon Coopers. And they're going to find a way to make mountains out of molehills. Just like this entire thing was. This is Nothing Burger confirmed. And believe it or not, actually Martha McCallum last night pretty much said that. That the numbers now that they're looking at are maybe 68,000 dead. Remember, at one time it was 2 million. And then they came back, okay, well, maybe it's not going to be 2 million, but it'll be 1 million. Okay, maybe 250,000. Okay, but for sure, 150,000. Okay, no, not 150,000. Now it's down to, and it may not even be 68,000. It's annoying. It really is almost more than annoying. It's frightening to see so many people, because of their ridiculous adoration of the government the last 3 years and its leader, be willing to accept medical tyranny, overriding literally every basic premise of the Bill of Rights, secure in one's persons and papers, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the 10th Amendment that doesn't give the government the ability to do what it's doing. Over and over. No one is to be deprived of anything without due process. Look at all the people that have been deprived of their jobs. 22 million without due process. Anyway, God bless y'all. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for the support, by the way. I really appreciate it. Been trying to do 2 videos a day for the last couple of weeks just to maintain numbers, because when you have unpopular opinions here on YouTube, they definitely censor you in a way that's just completely unfair. If you take my channel and you type it into the search on YouTube, the first two results are two petulant little baby whiners who made videos about me not being fair to them. It's really sad. That's the first result you get. So, anyway, 1,300 videos versus that. Like, share, subscribe.